The story starts with the lively atmosphere of a girl band concert called Dream Suite. However, a tragic incident occurs during the concert when one of the band members, a beautiful girl named Duna, falls into the water and drowns. The scene then transitions to two young men, Sujin and Wonjun, who are driving in a pickup truck while enjoying the music from Dream Suite's album. On that particular day, Sujin and Wonjun were on their way to Seoul, as Wonjun was attending university there. He was a second-year civil engineering student. At first, he used to commute from home for his classes. However, he found the journey to be quite far, expensive and tiring. So the new semester, he decided to rent a place in Seoul to make life easier. Before they parted ways, Sujin asked Wonjun if he ever happened to meet Duna, one of the members of the girl band Dream Suite. He should pass on his greetings. Wonjun agreed, even though it seemed like an impossible request for ordinary people like them. Wonjun was a typical student who always focused on his studies. He even used his bus rides as an opportunity to study. Eventually, he arrived at the house he had rented in Seoul and saw a beautiful girl outside, smoking a cigarette. It turned out to be Duna herself. When Wonjun greeted her, she simply turned away and continued smoking. Despite her disinterest, Wonjun tried to strike up a conversation as a friendly neighbor. Sadly, Duna didn't pay much attention to him. Inside the house, Wonjun met his new housemates, including Yoontak, who was friendly, and Jonghoon, who tended to be quieter. Excited about his new place, Wonjun began organizing his room, but the noise seemed to disturb Duna, who was trying to rest. A little while later, Wonjun decided to try making some extra money by offering private Korean language lessons. He eagerly put up flyers at a nearby bus stop, hoping to attract students. However, it seemed like other private tutoring flyers were more popular than his. When he got back home, he once again ran into Duna, who was smoking. She immediately got in touch with her manager, feeling that Wonjun was acting like a stalker. Not long after, Wonjun realized he needed curtains, so he used old newspapers to cover the window. Shortly after, Sujin called and offered Wonjun a tutoring job in math for 800,000 won per month, which he quickly accepted. Sujin, a big fan of Duna, also asked for the return of his white jacket that Wonjun was wearing, unaware it was a limited edition for die-hard Duna fans. The following day, as Wonjun headed to his tutoring session, he walked while singing a song by the girl group twice. Duna, feeling offended, approached him, leading to a brief argument. Wonjun emphasized that he was just an ordinary student, not a stalker. Duna suppressed her annoyance and continued smoking. Later that evening, after teaching his student, Wonjun bumped into his school friend named Jinju. They had a chat over some soju, and surprisingly, Jinju was now studying at the same place as Wonjun. After a long conversation, it started snowing and Wonjun still seemed interested in Jinju, so he gave her his scarf. They parted ways at the bus stop that night. Upon reaching his house, Wonjun encountered Duna again, who was crying in the middle of the snowy rain. She suddenly fainted, so Wonjun rushed her to the hospital. When Duna regained consciousness, she refused to contact her family when asked about her condition. Eventually, Wonjun became her guardian at the hospital. When the nurse explained Duna's condition in detail, Wonjun appeared very concerned about her health. Afterward, he brought her a pair of socks. However, as a celebrity, Duna was used to being served and arrogantly asked Wonjun to put the socks on for her. Nevertheless, Duna started to feel that Wonjun was a genuine person, not a stalker, so they eventually introduced themselves. The following day, Sujin suddenly called Wonjun, informing him that the student he was going to tutor had cancelled because they thought Wonjun was a smoker, thanks to his scarf smelling like Duna's smoke. Sadly, Wonjun had to let go of the opportunity to earn 800,000 won. Some time later, Wonjun went to pick up the curtains he had ordered and ran into Duna again, who appeared much healthier now. Surprisingly, Duna invited him to have breakfast together, but a frustrated Wonjun declined her offer. However, Duna seemed to keep appearing in Wonjun's daily life, whether in front of his window, when he was leaving or returning from school, or even when he was handing out clothes. Indifferently, Duna continued to gaze at Wonjun while smoking, and she mentioned that he looked tittier than most civil engineering students. Duna once again invited him to share a meal, which led Wonjun to ask if she might like him. Duna burst into laughter at his innocence and admitted that she just wanted a friend. As the morning sun rose, Duna took the opportunity to pray, looking beautiful as she expressed gratitude for her life. Watching Duna, Wonjun seemed captivated. While having breakfast in the cafeteria, Wonjun ran into Jinju again. Later, Jinju intended to return Wonjun's scarf due to the cigarette smoke smell. However, when she tried to remove the scarf from her neck, it got caught on her earring. Wonjun helped her take it off, and during that moment, they both felt somewhat awkward together. As time passed, Wonjun continued distributing brochures for private tutoring and searching for job opportunities. While waiting for the bus one day, he received a call from a foreign number. With hope in his heart, he answered, thinking it might be a potential student. However, it turned out to be Duna, who had obtained Wonjun's number from one of his brochures. Feeling upset due to his financial difficulties, Wonjun got angry with Duna. He expressed his frustration and asked her to stop following him. The following day, Wonjun regretted his anger towards Duna and tried to apologize by inviting her to have a meal together. However, Duna responded coldly. Nevertheless, while Wonjun was in class, Duna suddenly showed up wearing a hat and sat right next to him, causing a commotion among their classmates who were surprised by the arrival of the beautiful girl. Luckily, no one realized that the beautiful girl was Duna. From that moment, they became friends and exchanged phone numbers. Duna, despite being a celebrity with immense popularity, was willing to be friends with Wonjun, an ordinary young man leading a normal life. Shortly after, Duna relaxed while wearing the socks given by Wonjun, while he himself was having a meal with two of his housemates. During this time, he learned that Jonghoon was into healthy eating, exercising, and not interested in romantic relationships. On the other hand, Yoontak was always searching for true love, but never managed to stay in a relationship for more than 100 days. Meanwhile, in another room, Duna put away her cigarettes in the closet and headed out for some shopping. On her way, she spotted Wonjun, who was on his way to his part-time job. However, before she could greet him, Wonjun had already boarded the bus. At his workplace, Wonjun was surprised to find Jinju working there too, and they both seemed enthusiastic about their work. This reminded Wonjun of their high school days when they first met, and Jinju had asked him for help with math. Elsewhere, Duna seemed to be enjoying her solitude, snacking, and watching TV. She ignored a call from her mom. Later on, feeling bored, Duna went out for a smoke and coincidentally ran into Wonjun, who was feeding stray cats. She casually mentioned that she felt annoyed when he didn't answer her calls, making her feel like she was being ignored. Not long after, Duna was reminded of the immense pressure of the celebrity world and reached out to Wonjun to have a drink together. However, that night, Wonjun was attending a student meeting, and he was interrupted by a classmate while answering Duna's call. Unexpectedly, Duna arrived and confronted the troublemaker, hitting him on the head. To avoid further trouble, Wonjun quickly protected his friend's head with a helmet, resolving the issue. He scolded Duna for her uncontrolled behavior, but after hearing her reasons for wanting to meet, they planned to have a drink together. They ran into Jinju on the way, and at first, Duna hesitated to let her join, but they ended up drinking at Duna's house. That night, Duna and Jinju got drunk, and Jinju stayed over because it was too late. Meanwhile, Wonjun remained sober, watching over them. As Jinju fell asleep, Duna went up to the attic to smoke but ran out of cigarettes and ended up having a private conversation with Wonjun. In her semi-drunken state, Duna confessed that she envied their closeness as she hadn't been close to anyone in a long time. While trying to help her down from the attic stairs, they ended up hugging. Duna moved closer to Wonjun, making his heart race, but she didn't kiss him. The next day, Wonjun was distracted by the events of the previous night, but tried to push his thoughts aside. At campus, he met Jinju, and they exchanged aprons that had been accidentally swapped. During their conversation, Jinju mentioned that she had unintentionally seen Wonjun and Duna kissing, causing him to panic and clarify the misunderstanding. On their way back from campus, he encountered Duna, who was sorting through garbage. They got into a heated argument because Wonjun felt that Duna had spoken thoughtlessly without considering how it might be perceived, leading to Duna expressing her anger by angrily throwing garbage. The following day, Wonjun called Sujin, curious about Duna's recent behavior, which seemed to indicate she was feeling depressed. Sujin explained that Duna had taken a break from her career in entertainment to focus on her education. In the evening, Wonjun invited Duna to have dinner with two of their housemates, Jonghoon and Yoontak, who were quite surprised by their beautiful neighbor. As they walked together, Wonjun asked Duna about why she had left Dream Suite. She briefly replied that she couldn't sing anymore. During their evening together, Duna's joy was evident when she won a stuffed toy from a claw machine. It may have seemed simple, but it brought her a happiness she had been longing for. Do-na recalled the day before she left the Dream Suite group, when she dazzled everyone with her performance, yet behind the scenes, she faced immense pressure, threats, and jealousy from her fellow group members. She even received hate from internet users. Do-na removed her necklace and collapsed on stage, leaving everyone concerned for her. Back in the present, Wonjun and Do-na stopped at a park and realized it was Do-na's birthday. Curious about Wonjun's unrequited love for Jinju, Do-na gave him some tips on making Jinju feel special, suggesting he tried pushing her against a wall and gazing into her eyes for 5 seconds. Instead of immediately accepting the advice, Do-na asked Wonjun to try it on her first. They locked eyes for 5 seconds, creating an awkward moment, but they both tried to hide their feelings. When Do-na arrived home, she noticed a gift box on the table, and it startled her. She rushed out to the street, her face showing confusion. Meanwhile, Wonjun called Jinju to clarify that his relationship with Do-na was just a friendship, which made Jinju feel relieved. The next morning, Wonjun shared his conversation with Jinju with Do-na, and she speculated that Jinju might have feelings for him, though Wonjun, being naive, was unsure. While organizing his bookshelf, Wonjun recalled a high school photo with Jinju and wrote "soulmate" on it. He had not been assertive in expressing his love for Jinju in the past, leading to their friend-zone relationship. On the other hand, Do-na felt anxious and took precautions by closing all doors and windows when she saw a gift containing a necklace, similar to the one she had received a few days ago. She barricaded the door with a chair and turned off the lights, displaying fear and unease. Meanwhile, Wonjun and Jinju were busy at work, but Wonjun finally gathered the courage to ask Jinju out on a date to the Cherry Blossom Park. Jinju happily agreed to his proposal. After work, Wonjun was surprised to find Do-na's room in darkness. Concerned, he looked for her and discovered she was locked in the bathroom. Without hesitation, Wonjun broke the bathroom door lock to free Do-na, and they shared a long embrace. Though confused, Wonjun hugged her back and then promptly fixed the damaged bathroom door. Do-na, with a blank expression, even found him sexy while fixing the door. She confided in Wonjun that she had never had a father figure in her life. To cheer her up, Wonjun took Do-na to a bear-punching arcade machine, hoping it would help her release her pent-up emotions. They spent the night playing basketball, bonding as friends. Afterward, they lay down, gazing at the cloudy sky. Wonjun shared his successful plan to ask Jinju to the Cherry Blossom Park, and Do-na, excited for him, sat up to hear all the details, inadvertently getting too close to him, making him move away. In the end, Wonjun and Jinju went to the Cherry Blossom Park together, but during their outing, Wonjun innocently mentioned Do-na, sparking some jealousy in Jinju. Not long after, heavy rain forced them to seek shelter at a bus stop. Jinju's friend Sehun passed by and offered them a ride, but his attention seemed more focused on Jinju, making Wonjun jealous. When Yoontak invited Wonjun for pizza, Sehun revealed that he knew Yoontak as they were childhood friends. They all met for pizza, and Yoontak teasingly encouraged Sehun and Jinju to start dating, making Wonjun feel uncomfortable. He decided to leave under the pretense of buying ice cream, overwhelmed by jealousy. Wonjun couldn't help but reminisce about a high school memory when he had shared a scarf and a snowy hug with Jinju. Unfortunately, that was in the past, and things were different now. Lost in his thoughts, Do-na suddenly appeared and joined in buying ice cream, sensing that Wonjun was feeling jealous. As they were about to enter the house, Do-na stopped to smoke, and Wonjun kindly lent her his jacket to keep warm. However, Jinju noticed this and became jealous. The next morning brought a basketball match between the engineering and Korean literature departments. Jinju and Do-na cheered for the game, but Jinju's jealousy resurfaced when she saw Do-na enthusiastically supporting Wonjun. After the match, Sehun invited them to have a meal together, but Do-na subtly signaled to decline the invitation. She didn't want to worsen Wonjun's jealousy by having him see Jinju with Sehun. Finally, Wonjun opened up to Do-na about his past confession to Jinju, which had resulted in her distancing herself and leaving him with unreciprocated feelings. Following that day, Jinju and Wonjun's relationship became strained. Meanwhile, Do-na continued to feel anxious when she was alone. Even inside the house, she couldn't shake her fear, especially when she saw people running, which reminded her of her traumatic experiences with cameras and cheering audiences. To ease her anxiety, Do-na intentionally invited her friends, including Jinju, to her house for a meal. During this gathering, Do-na revealed that she felt like someone was stalking her and showed them a photo taken at her window. Shockingly, they spotted the stalker outside the window, prompting Wonjun, Yoontak, and Jonghoon to chase after the intruder. They managed to catch the culprit, and Do-na, in a moment of intense emotion, grabbed a glass bottle as if she might attack. Thankfully, she didn't follow through. Despite her fear, Do-na refused to involve the police. Later, Jin-ju and Wonjun returned home together. Jin-ju expressed her desire for independence and work, but her dad disapproved, sending her a scolding message, assuming she was just playing around and dating. A little later, Wonjun identified the stalker and gave the information to Do-na so that she could report it whenever she felt ready. He continued to comfort Do-na, making her feel safe. At one point, she even wanted to sleep with her head on Wonjun's lap, and he agreed. They ended up holding hands as they slept peacefully until morning. As time passed, Wonjun continued with his daily life. He interned at a cafe and also looked for extra income by working at an amusement park. One day, Do-na, feeling lonely, decided to visit the amusement park for some fun. However, Wonjun was on his shift and couldn't join her immediately. Despite this, Do-na was patient and waited for him to finish work. Later, they had a meal together, and Do-na shared that she was starting to enjoy her ordinary, non-celebrity life. She used to be anxious after stepping away from singing and dancing, but now she felt content and could lead a normal life. Meanwhile, Wonjun simply wished for a simple, good life like everyone else, without having to work too hard. They both opened fortune cookies, and the message in Wonjun's cookie hinted that he might encounter a challenge soon. On their way home, Wonjun talked about his younger sister's illness, which put a financial burden on his mother. This was why he worked diligently and didn't want to live a lazy life. Exhausted from work, he ended up falling asleep on Do-na's shoulder during the bus ride. The next day, Wonjun was strolling with Jin-ju on campus, talking about the fortune cake predictions they got the night before. But their chat got interrupted when they spotted a girl named Yi-ra, causing a scene with her cheating boyfriend. Yi-ra's life as a student seemed pretty chaotic with her boyfriend cheating on her, and she almost got kicked out of the dorm for her behavior and frequent drinking. Meanwhile, there was some gossip going around about Do-na because someone snapped a picture of her having dinner with Wonjun. This had fans and haters talking, and it got Wonjun concerned about Do-na's emotional well-being. He went over to talk to her right away, but Do-na didn't seem too bothered. She was busy baking some burnt cakes and seemed used to people saying mean things about her. Wonjun took this seriously and was willing to support her if she wanted to address it publicly, but Do-na just made light of it and cracked a joke. On another note, Jin-ju headed back home. Her family was pretty strict, especially her dad. He had told both his daughters to delete their social media accounts. As Jin-ju was about to do that, she accidentally stumbled upon a photo of Wonjun and Do-na, which was the hot topic around town. The following day, Do-na got all dressed up and invited Wonjun for a date, but Wonjun was busy studying for an exam. Just as she was about to pick an outfit, Yoontak called Wonjun urgently for a serious issue. Innocently, Wonjun rushed to Yoontak's location, leaving Do-na behind. Surprisingly, Yoontak asked Wonjun to join him for a blind date with 3 girls he knew from social media, and one of them turned out to be Yi-ra. During the blind date, Wonjun and Yi-ra were paired up and were shocked to realize that they already knew each other. In the past, their moms were close friends, and they were born at the same time in the same hospital. Their moms wanted them to be a couple from a young age, and they grew up together. Yi-ra turned into a tomboyish and mischievous girl, while Wonjun remained innocent and timid. When they were 12 years old, Yi-ra moved to Brazil, but now she was back in South Korea. During the blind date, Wonjun pretended not to recognize Yi-ra, but she saw through it. While playing a game, Yi-ra had to touch Wonjun's cheek and kiss him, which made Wonjun try to avoid her advances. They ended up arguing like children. Meanwhile, Do-na felt lonely and lost in thought in front of her house. Soon, Yoontak arrived, a bit tipsy, and mentioned that Wonjun was on a date with another girl. Do-na seemed a little jealous upon hearing this. After the blind date, Yi-ra was quite drunk, and since Wonjun had known her since childhood, he had no choice but to accompany her home. When Wonjun reached his house, he saw Do-na waiting for him, smoking, and accidentally burned her hand. Worried, he rushed to help her with ice. Do-na then interrogated him, showing signs of jealousy. In that moment, Do-na kissed Wonjun, and this time, he didn't resist. That night, Wonjun couldn't sleep, deeply troubled by his feelings, and he couldn't concentrate in class either. Eventually, Wonjun decided to have a private talk with Do-na. He told her that their kiss had crossed the line of friendship, and he didn't want to play with his feelings. He was scared of falling in love with her, because their lives were so different. Sometime later, while Wonjun was in class, Yi-ra reappeared after getting kicked out of the dormitory. She begged Wonjun to let her stay. At first, he said no, but Yi-ra made a scene and embarrassed him in front of everyone. So reluctantly, Wonjun agreed to let her stay. On the other hand, Sae-boon confessed his feelings to Jin-ju. However, she turned him down because she had feelings for someone else, which happened to be Wonjun. On that day, Jin-ju made a big decision in her life. She chose to stay in the dormitory and live independently without her strict dad's support. With heavy heart, Jin-ju had to block her dad's contact. Feeling troubled, she met with Wonjun and asked him not to distance himself too much. Some time later, Yi-ra asked two friends to help her move using a pickup truck. It turned out she was moving into the same house as Wonjun and would be living with Do-na. Surprisingly, Do-na intentionally invited Jin-ju to come and help with Yi-ra's move. That night, Jin-ju bravely confessed to Do-na that she liked Wonjun and didn't want her to take his love away. Unexpectedly, Do-na revealed that she also had feelings for Wonjun. The next day, Yi-ra needed to use the bathroom and accidentally entered the men's bathroom, where she unintentionally saw Jung-hoon taking a shower. When she got to campus, Yi-ra shared this incident with her friends, and they got very excited. Meanwhile, Do-na felt troubled by her feelings and decided to go to a nightclub to clear her mind. She didn't mind if someone took her photo in the crowd. Unexpectedly, Do-na ran into an old friend and had a long conversation. On the other hand, Wonjun and others were busy preparing dinner and drinking beer. Jin-ju, feeling cold, asked Wonjun if she could borrow a blanket, and he invited her into his room. In his room, Jin-ju smiled when she saw a photo of their high school memories. But her happiness faded when she noticed a pack of cigarettes belonging to Do-na on Wonjun's bed. This hurt Jin-ju's heart. Later that night, Jin-ju and Wonjun went for a walk together. Jin-ju finally opened up about her chaotic family situation and her dad's disapproval of her dating. Now that she was free from her family, she wanted to rekindle her relationship with Wonjun. Unfortunately, Wonjun declined because his feelings for Jin-ju had changed. After their conversation, Wonjun went home feeling restless because Do-na hadn't returned yet. He waited in front of the house, and when Do-na arrived with the man tried to kiss her. However, Do-na refused, which frustrated the man. He accused Do-na of using him in the past to get In-wook's attention. Wonjun intervened and tried to retrieve Do-na's phone from the man's car. The man claimed that Wonjun was just a new toy for Do-na to gain In-wook's affection, which angered Wonjun, and he forcefully slammed the car door, injuring the man's hand. Before long, Wonjun decided to play basketball alone to let out his emotions. Shortly after, Do-na approached him. Initially, Do-na wanted to join the game and playfully touched Wonjun's head. However, he quickly pushed her hand away, torn between not wanting to be toyed with by Do-na. Eventually, Do-na confessed that she had fallen in love with Wonjun, and this time, he kissed her lips, confirming that he shared the same feelings. They kissed passionately until morning. The next day, Yi-ra met Jung-hoon at the Jiu-Jitsu club, where they sparred, and Yi-ra won the match thanks to her experience from living in Brazil. Meanwhile, Soo-jin and Wonjun met at a cafe, and Wonjun became curious about Do-na's life on social media. There were many negative stories about Do-na, including reports of her mom being in debt over 1 billion won. However, Wonjun chose to ignore those stories and was instead embarrassed by a video of Do-na from a photo shoot. That night, Wonjun and Do-na slept together in his room. The next morning, Jin-ju came to the rental house with breakfast, and everyone eagerly joined in. After a while, Do-na emerged from Wonjun's room, surprising everyone. Finally, Wonjun appeared and declared his feelings for Do-na, breaking Jin-ju's heart. On the other hand, Do-na's mom paid her a visit at home. However, her visit wasn't driven by motherly affection, like most moms. She came solely to ask Do-na to work again to help pay off the remaining debt. Do-na's mom showed no concern for Do-na's feelings, and even went so far as to call her a coward with a bad personality, claiming she wanted to be disliked by many people. That night, the promotional concert for the third Dream Suite album took place. Do-na attended in disguise. On the other hand, Wonjun went to meet Jin-ju to watch the fireworks. Initially, he declined, but Jin-ju convinced him to join her. Jin-ju then confessed her feelings, from when she first fell in love with Wonjun to her current emotions. Wonjun thanked her and appreciated her feelings but still turned down her love because he had fallen for Doona. After meeting Jinju, Wonjun seemed restless while waiting for Doona, who hadn't returned yet. During the wait, Yura approached Wonjun to console him. Yura offered some wise advice, suggesting that Wonjun should clarify his relationship with Doona. After a while, Doona called Wonjun and invited him on a trip. Doona reminisced about her childhood memories at her grandmother's house. When she was young, Doona was raised by her grandmother as her mom was always busy and neglectful. On the way to her grandmother's house, Doona fell asleep on Wonjun's shoulder. Her grandmother's house was in a rural area at the foot of the mountains, appearing picturesque and refreshing. They played and spent time together, and Doona felt happy, enjoying the rain as they rode bicycles and feeling like she had returned to the past. When they arrived at her grandmother's house, their clothes were wet, and they were both shivering from the cold. Eventually, they became intimate. The following morning, Doona woke up early and enjoyed the fresh air. Meanwhile, Yura was practicing jujitsu with Jung-hoon. However, Jung-hoon kept avoiding her because of Yura's aggressive behavior. After their training, Yura planned to invite Jung-hoon for a meal. However, she suddenly stopped in her tracks when she accidentally saw her ex-boyfriend kissing someone in a cafe. Jung-hoon, who had initially declined her invitation, felt sorry for her when he saw her heartbroken. Eventually, they shared a meal together. Yura's mood shifted dramatically. She had been heartbroken, but suddenly cheered up because the food was so delicious, and this caught Jung-hoon's attention. On the other hand, Wonjun and Doona went for a walk to find breakfast. Upon returning home, Doona spotted a familiar figure in her life, her manager Inwook. He was the man who had taken care of Doona when she was young and had nurtured her career up to this point. Doona was overwhelmed with sadness, causing her to let go of Wonjun's hand and approach Inwook, and got into Inwook's car. Inside the car, Inwook showed concern for Doona, who had a fever, while Wonjun was left behind. During the journey, Doona became emotional and poured out her heart, expressing her desire to quit her career. She also felt that her love was ignored and discarded by Inwook, as if she was being used. Since losing Inwook, Doona felt that her life had become chaotic and full of trauma. However, Inwook had a different perspective. He was angry and believed that Doona was not sincere and had used him to advance her career. Late that night, Doona was taken to the hospital for treatment. During this time, she ignored calls from Wonjun. Initially, he waited for Doona, but he eventually went home after receiving a call from his mom because his younger sister was readmitted to the hospital. That night, Wonjun spent his time drinking at Sujin's cafe. He felt that his life was becoming very difficult. On the other hand, Doona chose to leave Inwook and refused to return to the entertainment world. She eventually went back to her grandmother's house and sat on the porch, reminiscing about the early days of her career as an idol. Inwook had taken care of everything for her, from her living arrangements and clothing to her food and health. Meanwhile, Jung-hoon couldn't stop thinking about Yura's cheerful face. Shortly after, Yura called him and asked for help trying on some clothes she had designed. However, when Jung-hoon finished trying on the clothes and came out of the room, he couldn't find Yura inside. Unexpectedly, Yura's ex-boyfriend showed up, seeking reconciliation because he had run out of money. Surprisingly, Jung-hoon emerged wearing the eccentric clothing designed by Yura. He even called Yura honey and pretended to be her boyfriend to scare off her ex-boyfriend and make him pay his debt. Luckily, their plan worked, and Yura was thrilled to get her money back. On the other hand, Wonjun returned to the rental house and found Doona waiting for him. Doona tried to explain what had really happened, but Wonjun refused to listen because he was already hurt. That night, Doona met with one of her colleagues from Dream Suite. They had an honest conversation and caught up. Doona's colleague was surprised to see the changes in Doona, as she was no longer dieting, living freely, and had become unemployed. While her colleague seemed to share a similar fate with Doona in the past, she also appeared burdened with her life. Unfortunately, she couldn't be as brave as Doona in leaving her career. Meanwhile, Wonjun had just closed the cafe where he worked and unexpectedly ran into Jinju. They seemed awkward as they started a conversation. In that moment, Jinju, still heartbroken over Wonjun, refused to rekindle their friendship. She honestly stated that she wanted to love herself more and reduce communication with Wonjun. Hurt by Doona, Wonjun decided to move out. However, Doona immediately approached him and stopped him, regretting that she realized her feelings too late and didn't want to lose him. However, Wonjun needed validation and asked Doona to say that she loved only him. Doona affirmed that she loved only Wonjun, and that night, they kissed and became intimate after reconciling. Some time later, Doona remembered her second album, which she had never continued because she didn't understand what falling in love felt like. But now, her circumstances had changed, and Doona felt like she was in a dream because she had never been so happy. Like any couple deeply in love, they spent a lot of time together. Even in their everyday activities, they appeared very affectionate. Doona felt that her life had become normal, just like any other couple. On that particular day, Wonjun and Doona were getting ready to attend a local concert. During their journey, they stopped by an accessory vendor and bought 2 pairs of rings. They enjoyed song after song performed by the singer. However, the singer became distracted when she noticed that one of the audience was Doona. In the middle of the concert, Wonjun received a call from his mom, informing him that his younger sister needed an immediate operation. Some time later, Jdrama and her 2 friends were seen getting drunk. On that day, Jdrama was very intoxicated, so she asked Jung-hoon to pick her up. Jung-hoon carried Jdrama home. When they arrived, Jdrama tried to kiss Jung-hoon. Initially, he hesitated, thinking that Jdrama was still drunk. But Jdrama insisted that she was sober, and Jung-hoon didn't hesitate to kiss her. They turned out to be in love with each other, and now they were officially a couple. Sometime later, a video of Doona singing on stage the previous day was recorded by another audience member and became trending. The overwhelming depression that comes with being a celebrity returned to Doona, so she could only find solace in her room while smoking. Doona remembered the moments with Wonjun when they went to the beach and expressed how happy she was to be an ordinary person. But for Wonjun, Doona was destined to be a star. In that moment, Wonjun said that he wanted to see Doona sing again. However, Doona said that Wonjun was being naive. She explained that if she were to become an artist again, the relationship would surely end. After the news spread widely, the public demanded that Doona return to singing once again. The clients who had previously contracted with Doona also contacted In-wook because they felt disadvantaged when they saw Doona, who had claimed to be on hiatus for education, suddenly returned to singing. Not long after, In-wook came to Doona's house to save the reputation of his agency. In-wook asked Doona to return to the world of entertainment because there were many things that had to be sacrificed if she didn't. In the end, with a heavy heart, Doona agreed to it. However, in her decision, Doona had not informed Wonjun yet, as he was still busy caring for his younger sister's recovery. On the last day, Doona stayed in her house. She chose to meet Jinju. Doona shared many things and also bid farewell due to her decision to return to the entertainment world, which would make them meet less frequently. As if having a premonition, that day, Wonjun intended to return to the rented house, but his ring fell. That night, Wonjun and Doona slept together, but Wonjun accidentally found another cigarette pack that did not belong to Doona. Wonjun assumed that the cigarettes must belong to In-wook. Eventually, Wonjun tried to find In-wook and have a private conversation with him. At that time, Wonjun was still trying to maintain his relationship with Doona, so he got into a heated argument with In-wook. However, In-wook explained that a love scandal for an artist in South Korea would cause even more losses, especially for Doona, who had not reached the peak of her career. Sadly, Wonjun finally went home and had to reluctantly accept that his love would eventually come to an end. Some time later, In-wook discussed Doona's return to the entertainment world with the agency. Now, Doona was not allowed to use her phone, and it was very difficult for her to go out freely. As time passed, Doona's return to the entertainment world began with a lot of love from her fans, and she succeeded in releasing her solo album. During a fan meeting, Soojin finally met Doona and asked for her autograph. Meanwhile, Wonjun was still busy preparing for his graduation exams, but he continued to send messages to Doona. Although Wonjun missed Doona greatly every moment, he also realized that they came from very different backgrounds. One day, Wonjun accidentally met Doona, who was quietly enjoying the snow near their old rented house. They decided to have a meal together, but Wonjun tried to keep his distance and maintain a cold attitude. He discussed his preparations for mandatory military service, and Doona attempted to lighten the mood by sharing various things, but Wonjun remained distant. Surprisingly, Wonjun decided to end their relationship and give up on his current struggles. Doona cried and urged him to keep all the promises they had made to each other. Despite feeling very sad, Wonjun had to admit that he wouldn't keep those promises, leading to the end of their relationship. They both parted ways with tears in their eyes. As time passed, Doona's career continued to flourish, and she became even more beloved by her fans. Meanwhile, Wonjun was occupied with his mandatory military service. Once Doona's career became more stable, In-wook allowed her to use her phone again. Doona went through all the messages that Wonjun had sent her in the past. In the end, everyone lived according to their predetermined destinies. Yoon-tak became a relationship motivator and hosted seminars for single women. Yi-ra and Jung-hoon got married, with Yi-ra preparing breakfast for Jung-hoon as they left for work together. Coincidentally, Wonjun had completed his mandatory military service and was staying at their house. He wanted to reconnect with his old friends. Wonjun also visited Sujin's cafe, where he unexpectedly ran into Jinju. They had a lengthy conversation, during which they discovered that Jinju had visited Brazil. Initially excited to show her photos, things became awkward when Wonjun accidentally saw a picture of Doona on Jinju's phone. The photo was taken during Doona's concert in Brazil. Not long after, the residents of the rented house gathered to catch up and share updates. Wonjun mentioned that he had successfully passed the second round of job interviews and declined a drink, as he had an interview the next day. However, he realized that he had left his jacket at his old house and went back to retrieve it. Surprisingly, he found Doona smoking in front of the house. They exchanged greetings but remained in an awkward silence. Eventually, they decided to meet, and Doona continued to gaze deeply at Wonjun. However, after their meeting, Doona couldn't hold back her tears because she felt that Wonjun had changed so much. With intense emotions, Doona met with Wonjun again and expressed how his presence had saved her in the past. She confessed that she might have done the unthinkable due to self-hatred if it weren't for him. Thanks to Wonjun, she had learned to find happiness, love herself, and overcome her loneliness and trauma. However, just as she had gained all of this, it was Wonjun who had left her. Doona asked Wonjun to apologize for abandoning her, and in the end, both of them cried and expressed their regret. That night, they finally embraced each other, relieving their longing. The series concludes by showing Wonjun and Doona continuing with their separate lives, even though their relationship has improved once again. Moral lesson from the story: love can be as confusing as trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, but in the end, it's worth the effort, even if it means eating a burnt cakes that contain sweetness and happiness.